in 2022. Now, someone like Professor Mbote, she has all the academic qualifications, she has all the students all over the country, but tell her to vie today. Will she become a governor or even a president? I want you to answer that question. And then also, sometimes we keep on talking about women who have made it to power because they are head of the political parties. For instance, Martha Karua, Charity Ngilu, because they were owning the party. They gave directions, they determined who could vie for any political party. So again, that aspect made them to vie for the seats they used to vie for and manage. But when it came to higher seats like the presidential, we've seen Martha Karua not making it. So what is the question behind her failure? If you look at Kawira, she's not aligned to a political party. It was not or UDA. She came as an independent party, and she's a woman. She was able to win that seat. What is it that made her tick, that convinced the constituents to elect her and floor people like Kiraitu and Linturi, two bigwigs? What made her, what really attracted the community to vote her in? I will respect time, but 5 seconds. Now, what we are trying really to interrogate, even Gladys Wanga, I didn't talk about her, but I told you 3 governors. I'm not going to talk about them, but I just wanted to bring the dynamic so that we understand. So it's not enough to be a daughter of a politician. It's not enough also to know people. Many things have a lot to play. So now the question is, we've seen the legislation is not working, and like Professor asked, are we going to wait for Jesus because it is not working? It is upon us, to come out and vie for these political positions and learn from the successes of these women, whether as MPs, whether as governors, and maybe one day we'll be president, who knows? In 2032, we might have Professor Mbote being the president, or we might have even Dili being our president, if she has amassed that, the skills that are needed, to convince people. I'm not talking about bribery. The skills, grassroots, and the many other things, and not the functionality of IBC, nor the language used in the court, but it will be something on a clean plate. And I think I will stop there because I can, you are so behind. Okay, you can read, we can have this conversation because it is very sensitive and tricky. But you know how power can privilege and also disadvantage others. Thank you.
Let's have a more organized clap for the panelists. Organized, organized, organized. Who's going to lead us? People in the Nyayo era, when Mtukufu Rais was coming, how did you used to welcome him? I see the Kibaki people have not yet gotten into these spaces. So thank you so much for the panel. I really appreciated your presentation. I was told not to try to summarize what you have presented so that we can create sufficient time for debate. I just have a few questions to the panelists that they might consider. This is tongue-in-cheek for Maragia. Since we are ethnically, we have ethnic bigotry in the way that we elect. And the law says that if you do not have mental capacity to make informed decisions, you should not vote. Should we all be stopped from voting due to our ethnic bigotry, so that it's equal. If persons with mental challenges cannot vote, and our ethnicity is a mental challenge, then we should not also be able to vote. Dr. Ogada, intellectual situation, intellectual and situational awareness of the courts. The court was dealing with the officers of the court who are supposedly advocates as officers of the court who are supposed to guide the court in coming up with an informed decision in the context of a very, very hotly contested election. What should the court have done to admonish the advocates? Would it have been better for the courts to not say anything about the judges, about the advocates and their actions towards trying to basically I think we are safe. Trying to basically hoodwink the court to make a decision one way or the other. Should the courts express their displeasure at the advocates, or it shouldn't be able to do that? Symbols of expression. Seasons, the word should be seasoned with salt. Are those not salty words to make everyone interested in the conversation that was going on? Ronald Kihali, dysfunctionality in the IBC. Your title, the title of your work might make someone think that you're going to discuss the IBC itself, because there's nothing in your title that indicates that you're going to discuss the court and the court's decision in relation to the IBC. And you said that there was a section that was upheld in 2017 and only declared to be unconstitutional in 2022. As an adversarial system, do you think if this issue was not brought to the court, how could the court have made a determination to declare it unconstitutional if it was not brought to the attention of the court? To Ambrose, Ambrose and Edward, women outperforming men. I asked Professor Mbote to respond to it, but she didn't. I'm asking, is it really true that women are outperforming men in the competitive elections? And if so, why have we not achieved the 2/3 gender rule, as is required by the Constitution? And then you indicated that in the map, the women representation in Nyanza and Western supersede other parts of the country. You said you were going to give us the reasons why. You didn't give us the reasons why. Why is it that women in Nyanza and Western are outperforming in terms of representation the women from the other parts of the country? To Professor Mbote and Dr. Aura, especially to Dr. Aura, on the basis of intersectionality, as you have expressed, why are the women who are in power and politics, are they representatives of women or are they representatives of a class? And if they are representatives of women, why is it that when something is said about Mamangina, they go to the streets? When something is said about the women and girls who are suffering in the Middle East, they don't go to the streets. Whose interests are they protecting in that particular context? So those are some of the questions that I have. Let's open to the floor so that you can get more questions. Yes, who will help me with the microphone? And since our panel, okay, it's very gender representative, where our questions will also be gender representative. So please go ahead.
Okay, so My first question, I want to just to respond to Dr. Ogada's presentation about the language of the law and basically what came out of the Supreme Court determination ruling on the election petition. My question is the structure of the Supreme Court. The entry point to the Supreme Court is an interview. And when you get to the interview, you are interviewed on an individual basis. You do not have the opportunity to choose your team players, your members. You don't know. You don't know them. It's just about you to get in. And then the expectation from the society is very high, that you're going to think together, you are going to make sound judgments and rulings in unison to the expectation of the society. So the issue is, at any given time, every time I look at that finding, that ruling, I always ask myself, who wrote this script? Who wrote this script? Dr. Ogada, did you ever imagine that we could pierce the veil and go beyond, go beyond that script, that ruling that was read to us? Something tells me that ruling was not scripted by the Chief Justice. But something also tells me that there's something she could have done about the language. That's my take. The other issue goes to Dr. Aura's presentation about what will cure our problem when it comes to women. And the big question she has asked is, will the law cure our problem? And she has given us good examples. My observation is that the factors that played for Susan Kihika are very, very different from the factors that played for Mwangaza in her county. And they are also very different from the factors that played for Wanga. So I do not know where we can get a common ground and say this is the script. Woman, if you want to get there, this is how you go about it. Because it's different in every environment. And Dr. Aura, you can agree with me that it is almost harder for a woman in Nyanza to get there. And you know the journey, you know the route. You know the route it takes. But I would want to conclude by just stating that it takes the law and it takes the skills. I think Justice Maraga's findings or advisory opinion to the Parliament said it all. Let us come with legislations that will help us to realize these objectives of the Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you so much. In order for us to allow as many people as possible to ask their questions, let's ask questions, not make statements. Please. Over there. I'll come to you, sir. I've seen you.
Thank you. Thank you for those presentations. I'd like to ask my brother Robert, you know, the areas where you said there are more women who have been elected, am I right to say that those are areas where they are more empowered, and those are areas that are more urbanized as opposed to the marginalized areas? And my thinking is the marginalized areas, they are still having a lot of cultural practices. So I'm thinking maybe the question that had been asked, it could be that they are more prone to cultural practices which are against women, as opposed to the urban areas where women are a little more accommodated. And then on the three ladies we have talked about, Dr. Kihika, sorry, Susan Kihika, Gladys Wanga, and Mwangaza, I just want to bring in Toto. You remember Toto? my sister here has actually responded well, saying that it all depends where you were and the choice you made. She made it because of the party she was in this time, not because she was a woman as such. So I would say there are other dynamics that we need to look at that is bringing in women. But on the other hand, again, if you look at Mwangaza, it's a little different. She fought for it.
Thank you. The gentleman at the back, 30 seconds per question with the alarm going off.
Thank you. Dr. Aura, Professor Mbote, while you are making my presentation, my mind went back, took the memory line to the year 1969. I was growing up. That is the year when we had the first female elected mayor in Kenya, the late Grace Onyango of Kisumu town, who later on went on and became the first elected member of parliament, first woman elected member of parliament for Kisumu town. 5 years later, we had Dr. Julia Ojiambo in 1974. It was a bitterly contested election. The present day Funyula, at that time it was called Busia Central. And in fact, I remember there was a petition, but which was later on upheld. Then after that, we had, although this one was elected because of the influence that the husband had. That is, I'm talking of this lady, Nyiva Mwendwa, whose husband was the first African Chief Justice in Kenya, Maluki Kitili Mwendwa. This lady was elected as a member of parliament for Kitui West. Looking at these three women, Grace Onyango, Julia Ojiambo, and Nyiva Mwendwa, and I'm talking of the environment at that time during the tenure of Jomo Kenyatta, that is the father of Uhuru, and later on at the advent of the Moi era. So I'm looking at that environment that these trailblazers were elected in office. And also not forgetting Jael Mbogo. Jael Mbogo put up a very spirited campaign in 1974.
Sir, because of time, can you ask the question?
Yes. Very spirited campaign in Bahati against Mwai Kibaki. And it's rumored that later on, Mwai Kibaki had to leave Bahati and go to Othaya because of the campaign that Jael Mbogo had done that. So my question is, can't that happen to the present day women? Thank you.
Thank you. The gentleman, and then Dr. Ogendi, and then Ndindi.
My question goes to Dr. Ogada. On the language of the court, some scholars who are not here have actually called it judicial bullying. What do you think it is? Does it amount to judicial bullying? And in the event we want to prevent this in future, what can be done? Is there recourse? Is there jurisprudence elsewhere where people have actually come back again and had that right to reply to the Supreme Court? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, as part of the practice, I will stand up. Now, Ogada, it's interesting because there's a lot of focus on language. And I ask myself, we are seeing a lot of movement from formalism. Eh? If you look at Mutunga's tenure, even students today of law. And to be fair, even the lawyers who are representing different parties, there was the issues of Pinky Pinky Ponky and other Kamagos, you know. So it's like a culture. So my question is, when this culture now crops into the other side, which is the bench, why is it a problem? And it seems like it is never a problem when this other side was doing it. Are we saying that that language shows lack of seriousness? And if the other side where we belong as advocates and other are using it, are we also serious? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Well, yes. Yes, you can continue.
Yes.
Go ahead, yes.
My question will go to Dr. Ogada and to my professor, Professor Kameri Mbote, together with Dr. Aura. So the one for Ogada is, does the Supreme Court possess the wherewithal to handle political disputes? And my question will be based on the election of 2022 and the BBI ruling. Both were very political, and this is a court that has lawyers, judges, people who may not have so much understanding on political issues, and I'm saying that with a lot of respect. So does the Supreme Court have that power? And if not, do we need another forum or another institution to handle such disputes in the future? So the other question would be on women empowerment. And this one will be, how can we make women empowerment to be holistic? Because when we hear about women empowerment, it seems to be vertical. Like we are fighting for the bigger seats up there. We are fighting to be in parliament, to be in boardrooms. But when we look at the society as it is made, there are people who do casual work, dominated by men. We will rarely hear people complaining that there are two men doing mjengo work. You will not hear any complaint that we have so many men in prison, and not women. You will not hear discrimination there. Recently, our country sent some soldiers in, Congo? You cannot hear feminists demonstrating, saying that we are not seeing women there. So the question is, how can we make this women empowerment to be holistic? And is it practical in the first place? My other observation that I made is in this war happening in Russia and Ukraine, there was an outcry from UN women where there was a complaint that so many women journalists have been killed as a result of the war. And the percentage was 16% women. So that means 84% they are men, but nobody is crying for the men. So, and I'm asking this with a lot of, I'm looking at society now, not as a lawyer. So how can we make this war to be holistic, and at the same time, not leave men behind? Because there is the cry that the boy child is also being sidelined. I hope that is clear, and thank you.
Thank you so much for the controversy.
Thank you. First of all, a point of correction. There's nobody who will fight to join prisons, even the women. We will not do that. We just will not do that. My question goes to Dr. Aura and Professor Kameri, based on Dr. Robert, Professor Robert. I didn't quite get the title. Based on what he said about the fact that one of the least favorable favored positions is the women representative positions. And that makes me wonder a lot about the whole aspect around, could it have been, because to me, and perhaps in many sectors, the position of women representative was a form of affirmative action. Could it be that that kind of tokenism, that kind of affirmative action, it worked, it has worked in bringing out women in leadership, but then now it seems like hiyo position ya wanawake wachia wanaume zile zingine. Is it working against us? Because if skills really are enough, there's no dispute about the kind of skills that we bring in as women. There's no dispute about the kind of intellect that we have. There's no dispute about the leadership that we are able and continually provide in very many areas. I mean, all you have to do is look at the corporate industry, look at any sector. You'll see women, they are, in leadership positions in as much as there are more men. But, so my question is, has these forms of affirmative action worked? But now it seems that there's a shift, that it's no longer working, that we do need to actually look at exactly why is it that is causing women not to be in political positions. What kind of environment is that? Why is it not working? What do we need to do to actually push for that? What is it that we need to do? That's...
Okay, the technical team, do you have anybody online who has a question? Anybody? Nobody online? The last question before we go to the responses.
My question goes to Dr. Aura. There is this common stereotype saying that women are their own worst enemy. I want to hear your views when it comes to election. Does it affect the way we elect women leadership? Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll give the panelists 2.5 to 3 minutes each to respond to the questions, starting with how we presented. So we'll start with Ms. Maragia.
Thank you. The way, you can correct me, the way I understood your question, it was not really a question, but it was buttressing the discussion that we had, that if indeed we are saying that people with mental disabilities should not be allowed to vote or to exercise their political rights, then we need to think about ourselves. He brought in the issue of ethnic bigotry. What is the criteria? And if with our ethnic cocoons we see we are able to vote, we are able to exercise our rights, then why can't we extend the same, or why can't we allow the people with mental disabilities also to exercise their rights? Of course, there have been some reasons given that they are not capable, they cannot make an informed decision, but where do we draw the line? The argument we have is that it is wrong to have an automatic qualification for people, disqualification for people living with mental disabilities to exercise their political right. So actually I understood it, Dr. as you were buttressing the discussion.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Ogada?
Wow.
And thanks, Maragia, for keeping time, just to put pressure on someone else.
3 minutes and I have so many questions. Anyway, I'll try. What should the court have done? Dr. Orago, the court should be intellectually aware. This is the Supreme Court of the Republic of Kenya, for heaven's sake. It's not the magistrate's court in Milimani. You need to apply your mind to the contextual background, the politics of the season. That is something that was lost in the court. Advocates who were told to, accused of hoodwinking the court. This is the story that has been going out there, and Elisha Ongoya and some other senior advocates did the background check. Arnold Oginga, who was pointed out for considerable attention by the court, the guy was a presidential agent. He was never listed as advocate. And through these words, the derision from the court. Arnold locked himself in his house for, is it 3 weeks? Celestine was barely picking calls, and it took people like Kongoya and senior advocates to reach out to these younger advocates. Velma, you subject counsel to insults and ridicule on social media. That is what the Supreme Court did. The structure of the Supreme Court, who wrote the script, Director ODPP, when you are appointed as Supreme Court judge, you are expected to perform. We had, personally, and I share this openly without fear or favor, I don't understand why Professor Kameri Mbote, for example, did not make it to that court. Because at that level, we need a philosopher, a thinker, somebody who can generate original thinking, somebody who is situationally aware, somebody who can create new knowledge and new thinking for the country. You cannot, at that level, do things that a resident magistrate can do. A philosopher king kind of thinking at that level. So it's no excuse. You are appointed as a Supreme Court judge, we will demand from you. Judicial bullying, we have given you the history of what happened with advocates. It was difficult. The personal stories for some of these advocates, people were fell into depression. It was quite difficult. Dr. Gendi, the culture. We had it in the BBI as well, and some of us came hard in terms of court performance. But I don't think, and by the court's own admission, the language from this side was tolerable. It was not insulting or demeaning. But when you pick out Julie Soweto and counsel for choice words like hot air, nonsense, wild goose chase, and you are not only dealing with the counsel, you're dealing with the general public. What message are you projecting? When I started, I projected the first cohort of the South African Constitutional Court. If you read Moseneke, All Rise, Judicial Memoir, he gives you the mind of a court that was aware that we are here for the moment. We are laying the blocks for a court that will set the tone and the pace of how we will deal. That's why they discarded the old methods of titles, Your Honor, Your Lordship, blah, 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 the reverences that associated with the old colonial thinking. Another situational thinking. Justice Charles Clason retires 5 years before his time to allow Pius Langa to come in as Chief Justice because he wanted him to lead and give the African face to the court. Judges were thinking, we are aware of the season and the moment, we have to do things differently. That is lacking from the Supreme Court. Does the Supreme Court expect, have the wherewithal for political rulings? That court will deal with cases brought to it. It's a non-leak case. If it's a non-leak case situation, you are required to innovate. Find situations, the legal tools for you to decide. But for heaven's sake, don't tell us it's political and fold your hands. Give us, you have the thinking. Thank you.
Thank you. Ronald?
Thank you. I think I just have 2 questions to address, so I'll try to address them first. And they were both from the moderator. So the first question, whether, okay, I think you asked whether the title was addressed or has talked about the court. I think that the title of my study is Addressing the IEBC Dysfunctionality, a Juxtaposition of 2022 and 2017 Presidential Election Judgments. Maybe you missed the last part, judgments. So I was looking at the judgments, I was looking at the court decisions, and I was looking at this dysfunctionality in the context of how the courts have interpreted the dysfunctionality of the IEBC. And even if you look at paragraph 242 of the Raila 2022, that is the 2022 election judgment, the court acknowledges that indeed the IEBC is a dysfunctional institution. So that is where my paper came from. I was addressing how is the court looking at this dysfunctionality, and how did the court in 2017 address this same issue. So I think that is captured in the title. And then with regards to your next question, I do agree with you that if this issue had not been brought earlier, then it would not have been addressed. And I think this goes back to Parliament. I think this goes back to the institution that is tasked with formulation of laws. And I think it is upon Parliament to avoid coming up with laws that are sort of regressive in a way. And it's also upon litigants to be able to have a wake-up call and to be able to seek the court's indulgence whenever we have those laws that spark controversy. So I think that is how I would address that issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ronald. Edward?
Okay, thank you very much. It's true we need models that are, that help democracy to thrive. I mean, if you ask whether women outperform men, then again, you start asking yourself questions around the models that we've had in our country and whether men have been able to deliver. And if corruption is one of those models where men kind of keep on accelerating, then we must try other models. We need models that help the country move forward. Joseph Luani, I think we met at the British Institute some time back, and it's good that you take us back to that memory lane with your experiences. And I think it's high time that we change, the narrative on how we move forward. For me, inclusion of women, like in any other parts of the world, people like Pelosi are able to perform, are the only people who are able to stand up against Trump, for example, as a case study. And we can borrow from such models and look for such women who are able to, challenge the status quo. And we have cases like Mother Karua standing up against Moi, and most men wanted to, bow down on bended knee. I think we need different narratives, and we should welcome new models in government. And it's true that the boy child is missing, as some of you are saying. And where is he missing? Most women have become aggressive, and I think the boy child needs to be aggressive as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aura, Professor Mbote.
Asked, are women outdoing men in the political spaces? I think the table that was presented speaks for itself. If you have 6% women in Senate, and then the trickle of governors, and then the issue of having less women coming in through the election. So I don't think that's factually true. The other issue that was raised by Didi about whether the 47 special seats hurt women. It's very easy for people who have not followed the history to think that these seats hurt women. But when you think that going to parliament was a male domain, and we discuss this a lot. What do we want to do? We want to normalize women being in parliament. You will not believe it that parliament rules didn't allow women to carry handbags to the chamber. And just the other day I had a member of parliament raising issue with the way Millie Odhiambo had gone in dressed in jeans that they were too tight. Another woman raising it. And I think what we need to do is to begin to look at when a woman attacks another woman or talks against another woman, and that goes to what you're asking, whether women are enemies of themselves. Are they representing a women's view, or is it the speak expected of them? So if we remove the 47 seats, you would have much less women in parliament. I can guarantee you that. For me, what I think is problematic is allowing women who go on those seats to stay there ad infinitum. There should be a sunset clause, so that you go twice max, then you go and pigana na wanaume kule nje, na wanawake wengine. Okay.
Thank you, Prof. Dr.
Okay, you'd asked about, I think Prof has already answered that one, whether these women represent, no, okay, can also try. You asked whether these women represent a class or women, yeah? Using intersectionality approach, huh? And you equated when they protest, when something is said about Mangina, they go to the street to protest. When it is about the non-classy women, then there's very little that is being done. Well, it depends when the protests are made. It depends on who is calling the protest. But for feminists, it's not about a class. We are all, the constituency is just about women. It's not, we should not be seen as focusing only on a particular class. So when they speak only for people who are of high power, I think some men or a few women always want to make it look like they're speaking because the person who is affected is of a high class than the others. And then now, secondly, when the protests, okay, these protests that are done, like you asked me about Middle East, they're often underplayed, they're not reported widely. So you'd have very maybe little, that could be an explanation, maybe little protests, but you've seen, even when the girls were suffering in Middle East, one of the people who raised the alarm was a woman, the woman rep of Kiambu. So it is not about a class or anything. The question is there a problem that is affecting a woman, regardless of her status? Then we try and find a way of doing it. It is not a script, okay, that we just follow from another level. And then someone asked about what is the script that women need to adopt? I told you, because it is dynamic, you can never have a one-size-fits-all. From what I have explained to you, for Kiika it is different. From Millie is different, from Toto is different. How did Toto manage to come? She's a small girl. It was her first time to come, even though it is a representative seat that is reserved for women. But how did she manage? She's a young girl. There are more older women with money. She didn't have money, a young girl. How did she come? So we have to look at different, dynamics. And then in terms of, yes, the Kisumu Maya, yes, she was a woman of many fasts, but you must look at where was she getting the support base, where was it coming from? It is again about her background, which I told you can propel a woman to be wherever she wants to be, whether as a husband or as a father. They give you support and they go out of their way to help you get a political seat. You will get it because they already have influenced other people and their names are known. So you can fly on their name, on the name tag. And whether women are enemies of their own, women are not enemies of their own. And that is a narrative we must change. Because sometimes when we say, for instance, when we find two women fighting because of one man, is it the women or the man? Who is causing the problem? Just answer the question, because it's always triggered by something else. And the person triggering is always the other gender. So you cannot really see. Even in elections, I have told you from an experience of Alison Chelaite, she told me how one of the mayors there, then there was no, she was not an MP, she was just like vying for the mayorship of Nakuru. She was told she's a woman and she can't speak for other women, and even women were being used to fight her. Not because they were against her, but these men were using them by giving them money to fight her. So you cannot really say that, and I've told you about issue of intersectionalities really would affect. A poor person like me, you give me 100 shillings, 500 shillings to go and protest against a fellow woman like me who may not likely give me that 100 bob or give me sugar. I will choose where the money is. So that is what happened. So we cannot really for sure say women are their own enemies. They are gatekeepers for men and as directed by men. So they have to follow because they have to live in that environment that is more favoring to them if they support the men. So we need to change that narrative. And the stereotypes, which are that I think that one I've already said. I think I've basically done with it.
There's the equality issue, that we should all be equal, even in death. I don't know how you'll respond to that.
Yes, you see, equality, you know, we cannot be equal. I think sometimes we misinterpret equality. We're talking about equality when it comes to opportunity. But then also we're looking at when it comes to benefits, we have to look at it differently. So we are not looking at this equality. And I think when you talk about equality, we look at small things of, can I ask Mr. Chimwemwe to go and get tea for me? Can he cook for me? It's not about those things. It's about transformation that goes to the economic, social, and the political that can transform our lives. So equality, we cannot be at equal level, but we are talking about equal opportunities and equal benefits to whatever that it is that each gender must get. Like equal opportunity in terms of political participation. It has been a cry from the 1500s, and now we're in the 21st century. So what is it that is preventing us? You know, as Ogada said there, we should have judges who are living in the moment. And what is the moment now? The moment is getting women to be at par. So we need people who have ideas like Evans there to transform your minds, because it's more about mindset, to let women have a chance to prove themselves.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And lastly, there is usually a wrong notion that when we give the women, men are always given seats, even if they don't deserve and they don't know anything. And then for a woman, the standards is raised so high, even when you are doing the job. They always look for small, small things to bring you down. So you cannot tell me about equality when you are, I mean, the bar is different when it is raised like for you, for instance, there, Dr. Orago. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
No double standards.
No double standards, as we have heard. Thank you so much, the panel, and we are sorry for moderator bullying. And technology bullying. It was because we needed to be able to keep time so that the next panel can also have sufficient time. Can we appreciate the panelists as they leave there? So, tea is ready, or coffee. Yes? Yes. So tea is ready, coffee is ready. You can take 15 minutes, and then we come back for the next session.